Welcome to the Legal Learning Podcast. I'm your host, Jolene. And with the Legal Learning Center, I help pre-law students and law students with their legal journey. Today, as the final installment of our Leaving the Law series, we will hear from Dan. Dan was a practicing attorney for 3 years before he left the practice of law to become an insurance broker. But Dan's story isn't quite that straightforward. Stay tuned to find out what happened to Dan and where he is today. At the end, I'll give you my top takeaways, but first, a word from our sponsor. Financially Free Aspiring Attorneys is a course with over $300,000 in money-saving tips. If you want to go to law school but you don't want to pay for it, this course is right for you. Visit legallearningcenter.com/financially-free for more information. All right, let's talk to Dan.
Hey, Julian. Yeah, my name's Dan Nevarez. I'm currently a executive work comp claims consultant for a broker here in Los Angeles.
Okay. And you went to law school, right?
I did.
When did you first decide as a child or at whatever age that you thought law school was right for you?
You know what? Going back in my memory, there's only two things I wanted to be when I grew up. I wanted to be a professional baseball player or a lawyer. So once I realized that I wasn't good enough to be a professional baseball player, I think the law was something that I always sort of aspired to, whether correctly or incorrectly. The visions that we all get on television growing up, I think that's probably what influenced me the most. I thought it looked pretty cool. And those were the only two things that I ever really wanted to do.
So what did you do through whether it's elementary, junior high, high school to prepare for law, if anything?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything consciously preparing for it more than it was just sort of always the plan. I took I always had an interest in history and government and those types of things, politics, growing up, and much more than I do now, to be quite honest. I was really into it back then. And then when I went to undergrad, the plan was always to eventually go to law school. So I took a political science major, a lot of history, a lot of government classes as well. I think I was like a class short of being a minor in history as well. Comparative politics, foreign history, that type of stuff. So I was always really gearing towards it, but nothing really too thoughtful other than just doing what I was interested in. And I guess I would also say, I should mention, I did an internship undergrad in Washington, D.C. I did a semester out there, and I worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office of the District of Columbia for a full semester. So that was sort of the first quote unquote big push towards the law.
Wow, that must have been exciting.
It was quite eye-opening and kind of scary, to be completely honest with you. I was 21 years old and I was living in DC, the other side of the country, and I was working at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, which, because it's a district and the U.S. Attorney's Office is actually more, at that point anyway, it operated very similarly to the District Attorney's Office. So I was placed in the homicide division, which just, I don't recall if that was my choice or if they selected me there. I think it was probably my choice because of the description that they gave. It seemed very trial oriented. And so I did that, and I was basically selected to be the right-hand person for this prosecuting attorney. And so he was working on a murder case the entire time I was there. And so I saw a lot of things that I never imagined I would see, especially at 21 years old, just kind of green and not knowing what I was doing. So I saw a lot of interesting things there. And that was both exciting and, like you said, exciting, but really scary at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds a little intense.
It was.
And now, did you feel like there was any pressure from your family or your surroundings to pursue law?
None, other than what I had placed on myself because I told everybody that that's what I was doing. And so I don't have any lawyers in my family. I had some distant relatives that went to law school and also weren't practicing and doing, higher education, that type of thing. But no pressure whatsoever, again, other than what I put on myself. And I felt, to be completely honest with you, not at this point, but later on in my life, in my career, I sort of felt like I had pigeonholed myself because I ultimately, quote unquote, figured out what I wanted to do early. So I just went down that track and didn't really explore other things, especially in undergrad. I think was probably, I had a one track focus. And so I took, like I said, lots of poli-sci, lots of government history, that type of stuff, all very much geared towards that. Looking back, I probably should have taken a few more business courses, that type of thing, just sort of broaden my options, because I think ultimately later, as I grew older, I probably gravitated more towards that type of stuff. Basically what I'm saying, I think, is if I went into undergrad now, I would probably be a business major versus a political science major. So no pressure from it. No external pressure though. Really just my own
tunnel
brain.
vision.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
So now
we all think we know everything when we're like 17, right? 18 years old, when we
Yes.
graduate high school and we're jumping into college and we think we know everything. So I thought I knew everything. I knew exactly where my life was headed. I had everything very much planned out. Nothing has turned out that way whatsoever. But it all worked out eventually. So I think we'll probably get to that a little bit later.
Now, did you know going into law school what type of law you want to do?
I think I entered law school with the thought of going the big corporate route.
Now, what state did you go to law school in?
I went to Notre Dame, so I went to law school in Indiana.
Okay, and did you take the bar there?
No, I didn't. By the time I graduated, I didn't want to be a lawyer anymore. I flat out did not want to be a lawyer. And while I was in law school, I actually had a great opportunity my second summer. That second summer when everybody is off doing their thing at the firm that they'll eventually work at, I was able to get an internship at a sports agency back here in Southern California. And I loved it. I thought, oh my gosh, like this is the perfect, marriage of my interests, sports, and, I've now been educated in law, and, what a great opportunity that was. So I came back here the second summer, interned here, and then went out back for my third year at Notre Dame, thinking sort of, networking and continue to work with those people. And I thought, okay, I'll transition into sports agency work. That didn't work out. So they were on a free hiring freeze. So they couldn't hire me even if they had wanted to. And so I was continuing to network with them. I basically graduated with no real plan at law school. Ultimately, it took me about almost a full year, I think. My timeline's it's been a while, but maybe a year plus or minus. And the firm that I interned with actually was able to it led me to another connection at another a sports media and marketing company, and that was actually back in Chicago. This was 2006, I want to say 2006, and what's coming. 2008 was coming, and it was a media and marketing company. The company that I worked for, I think when I got hired, was about 50 people, and in the year and a half before everything got bad, it had shot up to about 130. They were doing a lot of growth, and they were moving, and it was great. And then shortly after I was let go with a lot of other people, I think it shrunk back down to like 35. I struggled to find a job for a while because of the recession. And if anybody remembers, I'm guessing the people that are going into law school right now don't really remember what it was like business-wise in 2008. But it was really, really bad, much worse than even, I know we're in a pandemic now and the economy is terrible, but back then was different. You couldn't, nothing was, any industry, everything was, nobody was working, and you couldn't find a job. So I really struggled there for a while. And especially having been trained as an attorney, educated as an attorney, it almost hurt me to have that on my resume at that point, because everybody just assumed, oh, well, he's an attorney, he doesn't want this job. And I just wanted a job.
Yeah. So what year did you graduate law school?
2005.
Okay. And so you started at this agency in 2006?
Yes.
Okay. And did you take the the Illinois bar?
No, I kept asking my mentors and the people that I wanted to, work for and be like and all that stuff, everybody that I'm coming into contact with as an ex-lawyer, do I need to go be a lawyer so that I can ultimately be this? And I remember I got really good advice for that industry. And at that moment, the question that came back to me was, do you want to be a lawyer or do you want to do this? And I said, well, no, I want to do this. And I said, well, then you're halfway there. You don't need to go be that lawyer and be, in their words, miserable, and then realize you want to jump back and do, if you're already headed down that road. But when I came back to California and it was '08 and it was like no jobs anywhere, that's when I think it almost hurt me because nobody understood what was going on. And it was hard to explain my particular education business background situation. It was a weird time for everybody.
Yeah. Now, was there a point in law school where you felt like maybe I should drop out or this just really isn't working?
Yeah, absolutely. To be honest with you, about 3 weeks into law school, I looked around, I thought, wow, these people are taking this way more seriously than I am. But I never really had to work very hard in school. I was sort of the kid I remember in junior high, I got really good grades and the teachers would always say, well, that's not going to fly in high school. You're going to have to like really put effort in. And then I got to high school and kind of the same thing. I just kind of floated through and I got pretty good grades, but they knew I wasn't working very hard. And they said, well, that's not going to fly in college. And you're going to have to put some effort. And then I got to college and I still didn't have to do it. And I was still doing really well. And I remember they would tell me in college, they're like, well, you're going to have to learn to study and do a lot of work in law school. It's going to catch up with you. And then finally they were right. It finally did. Law school was completely different. And so I went into that law school with the mindset like, I'm fine. I got this. And then I got there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, oh my God, these people are taking it way more seriously. This is way more intense than I thought. To your point, it was really early that I thought, wow, maybe this really isn't for me. But I've never been one to quit anything at that point. And getting back to your other question, the pressure that I'd put on myself to finish, and I couldn't imagine going that far and telling everybody that this is what I was doing for my life and then quitting. Like I couldn't bring myself to do it.
Yeah, I completely understand that.
Yeah.
So was there other stuff that you did during law school that either made you think this might be okay? Like you said, that second summer was great, but like your first summer or other externships that kind of led you into a yes or no vote?
Not really. I mean, my first summer I worked for a judge. She wanted to expose me more to a wide variety of things than rely on me to get any work done for her. You know what I mean? So she was giving more than taking. She was fantastic. And so she let me observe her courtroom a lot. And she was she got me on this rotation where I would go to all the different courts, the different judges. And I mean, I saw so many different types of things. It was criminal, it was civil, it was family law, it was divorce, it was all sorts of, different things. And they let me, I had never seen anything like this. I was literally sitting on a chair next to the judge, like on the bench.
Podium,
and,
yeah.
I was on the bench and I saw everything and it was amazing. Like, and I would spend, like 2 weeks with such and such judge and 2 weeks with another. And it was great, but it was so funny because it was such a great opportunity to learn and see stuff. But I also, I wasn't given a lot of substantive work where like some other people were like, oh, drafting, pleadings or doing research, legal research and that type of thing, which I probably needed more of because that's the research and the writing of things is really, as you know, that's the day-to-day, that's the grunt work, that's the stuff, that's the meat and potatoes. So I just saw a lot more of, a wide variety, but work-wise, I probably missed out on some opportunities to get better.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. But yeah, it sounds like a good opportunity though.
It was
as far as
very,
exposure.
very cool. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, very much so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So in '08, you lost your job in Chicago. And so you headed back to LA.
Yes.
Okay. And so then what did you do?
like a lot of people in '08, I moved back in with family, trying to figure out, the next move. It was sort of depressing. It was sort of, disappointing, all that. I think my brother had his own business for a while. So actually for quite some time. So I worked for him for a while, doing like marketing type stuff, networking a lot, just really struggling again against the tide of what '08 meant for everybody. It was funny because one of the things that I had studied that I thought would be of interest that I'd never really considered before was sort of wills and trusts and estate planning and that type of stuff. So I remember I networked with an estate planning attorney, and she was fantastic. She said, your personality, the type of things that you like to do. She's like, have you ever thought of like fundraising or something like that? And I thought, no, what are you, like, where are you going with this? And what are you getting at? I'd never thought of that at all. And then shortly thereafter, I got involved with a place to do fundraising. And then about 6 months in, my boss was fired for some illegal behavior, basically sort of embezzling from the company. And all of a sudden I was left with no mentorship. I had no knowledge of what the heck I was doing. I joined this position with a promise to learn all of this stuff from this person, and now this person was gone, and so it was just a nightmare. And so what they ultimately did, the organization, they hired a new boss, and he let everybody go and started from scratch. And here I was again, in less than 2 years, having lost my second potential career, and then ultimately a friend of a friend on a Facebook posting said their company was hiring, and it was a training position at Travelers for a work comp claims adjuster. And I was able to convince them to hire me, even with the the JD on my resume. It was sort of, I remember there were a lot of questions about that and why I wanted to do that. And I had to explain a lot, and ultimately convince them to hire me and give me a shot. And so that's how I fell into insurance.
And what year did you get hired?
Oh, I want to say 2010.
And how long did you stay as an adjuster?
Well, I was there not too long, and then the managing attorney of the in-house legal department met me, and we hit it off. He knew I had a law degree, and he sort of questioned me, what the heck I was doing on that desk. Like, well, why don't you come over? He's like, you've got a law degree, you got a good, you went to a good school. Why don't you take this and come work for me? I said, okay. So then I studied for the bar while I was doing the adjusting, internal politics. He couldn't actually bring me over to the other side of the company for another year, which drove me crazy. But so I ultimately worked as an adjuster for just under 2 years, I want to say, or then ultimately they were able to transition me over to be the attorney, which was great because I was working for the same company. It was just really funny because on a Friday I was an adjuster, and on a Monday the very next week I was an attorney. And so working with a lot of the same people, but on the different side of the fence, it was kind of a surreal experience to change lives over the weekend like that.
Now, was it hard to study for the bar while you were working full time?
It was difficult, but it was so much easier than it would be in a situation where you've got kids, you've got responsibilities, that type of thing. So I was able to do it.
Yeah. And so how long did you stay as an attorney?
Again, plus or minus 3 years. So I think I was in that world on either side for 5 years total. And I would say, plus or minus a couple months, I was at 3 years as an attorney.
Okay. And why did you leave, or what did you do next?
Well, to be honest with you, I really enjoyed it when I first transitioned. When I transitioned from being an adjuster over to the attorney role, I really, really liked it. And I felt the people that I worked with were really, really great. There was a lot of camaraderie. There was a lot of looking out for each other. It was staff counsel inside of a major insurance carrier. The vibe that was there when I started definitely wasn't there anymore as I was progressing. And then honestly, that's just sort of like the specific workplace that I was in. But the work also started to get a little more tedious, and When I knew for sure was when I was out in Van Nuys at the board in Van Nuys. It was about 110 degrees. I was wearing a suit and a tie. It was about 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So the afternoon session's, winding down, and this guy is screaming at me, and I'm thinking, the hell am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't care anymore. Like, it sort of clicked on me. Like, I just didn't care anymore enough to fight, to argue, to be as combative as it requires. This job requires a lot of combativeness. And so, I just didn't have it in me anymore. And it clicked at that point, it clicked. And so I figured it was time to figure out the next move.
And so what year did you leave?
It was 2015 or 16 when I had that moment. And then, developing that next move takes a while. You can't just, you can quit, you can get upset and quit without that next move. I do not advise that. I did leave in April of 2016. It's come back to me now. So it's been about 4 years. 4 years ago I left. But what I went into was an opportunity at, it was still in insurance, and it was working for a broker, and it was a claims consultant. So basically what I do now is building off of the last two jobs that I had. I see a wide variety of clients, and I help navigate them through their workers' compensation situation. And so it builds definitely off of my role as an adjuster and as an attorney.
And you've been doing that 4 years?
4 years. Yep.
Okay. And do you have to be a lawyer for that?
You don't.
So if you had some advice for a pre-law student about, how to kind of just, I guess, make sure they're on the right path or anything like that, what would you tell them?
I would say, question why you're doing it. Because when we started this conversation, I admittedly didn't have a good why. It was, well, I just picked that. I had seen lawyers on TV, and I thought that looks like fun. That looks good. It's more than that, though. I was never going to be a doctor because science and blood and math were not where I was my strong suits. I was always good at English and writing and history and those types of things. So naturally, when you take your SATs in high school, you get the verbal and you get the math. And, mine was way more verbal than it was math and that type of thing. And I always gravitated towards those subjects. So it made sense from that perspective. I'm not going to say it's completely out of the blue that I just picked it out of random. Those were the things that interested me. But I think that because I didn't have any real experience with it growing up, any knowledge of what the day-to-day was like, I was ill prepared for getting into it when I did. Also, I think that you need to realize a lot of people, for me, I was that cocky 17, 18-year-old kid out of high school that knew everything. I was absolutely, and it's so funny now because I see my 5-year-old son, I know that, I know this, and it's like, oh, he's going to be real bad, and he's going to be worse than I was. And so I just sort of didn't want to admit that maybe I was wrong, even back then. And so I had those blinders on, and I said, nope, I'm going to go for it no matter what. And even, like I said, even in undergrad, I didn't take the wide variety of courses that I could have, where I could have been exposed to a few more things and maybe taken a different route. It ultimately worked out for me. I'm happy where I'm at. I like what I'm doing. I'm, making good money. I'm not, a millionaire, but I'm doing pretty well and I'm comfortable. But if I had gone a completely different route, I would either be where I'm at or better or worse, and I'd still sort of be in that ballpark. It's not something that you absolutely have to, go out and decide when you're 18, I'm going there and that's the only road for me. It's a winding road a lot of times. It's not always that way, but for me, circumstances that I had no control over created these different, avenues that I had to go down. So just be open, I guess. Most importantly, be open to what you're going to be doing, what you want to be doing, and be true to yourself and figure out, am I doing this for the right reason, or is there even a reason? Because I don't think I had a real, genuine, concrete reason why I was doing it.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if the students wanted to reach out to you directly, if they had some
Yeah.
specific questions for you,
Sure.
is there a way they can reach you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would probably be the best way. I don't know if we can
I
throw
can
that
put
up
it.
there. Yeah, put it up there, post. Yeah, absolutely. Happy to help people. If anything that I have said resonates at all, feel free to reach out, because I didn't have, I shouldn't say that. I did. I even said I had a few people that I asked what I thought was the right question at the right time. Do I need to go out and be a lawyer to do this? Do I need to do this? And they were good people, and they were good answers for me at the time. I might not have been asking the right questions, to be completely honest with you, at that point. So,
Yeah.
and in certain circumstances, it might have been too late, because I was already halfway down that road. So, yeah, if anybody has anything, if any questions, anything that I've said resonates, absolutely feel free to reach out through the LinkedIn, and I'm happy to help. That's why I did this, because it's a big undertaking. We didn't even get into debt and all of that pressure after the fact, after you feel that you have spent a fortune obtaining this degree, this piece of paper, and then you don't even want to do it anymore. There's that element to it that sort of you feel tied to keep going. And so I know a lot of people are afraid to leave, and ultimately they think, well, I've done this for so long. But one thing I'll also add is that many times people who are not lawyers, I will say this, they always say, oh, well, the JD is a great degree to have, you can do anything with it. You hear that all the time. And
Yeah.
that was also one thing that probably kept me going when I didn't know what that meant. But I thought, well, I might as well just have it, because like everybody says it's a great thing to have. There are certain circumstances that I experienced where it hindered me, because when the economy collapsed and I just needed a job, no one would hire me because of that. People wouldn't even get me a second look because I had that. They thought, oh, he's either, I don't know what they were thinking. I always assumed that they thought he'll leave as soon as things, get better, and he wants to be a lawyer. And I couldn't convince people who didn't know what being a lawyer really is. I couldn't convince those people that I didn't want to do it. I actually wanted to do something else. And so I think that's really important key point too, is because so many people that said that weren't lawyers themselves. They just, oh, I know a lawyer who does this, I know a lawyer who does that. Well, think about that. Think about that from the big picture. Person who's saying this, a lot of people who are lawyers who don't do it. They're doing this, they're doing that. Why is that? Why? What is it? That they basically are telling you. I know a lot of people who went to school to be a lawyer who figured out they wanted to do something else. And I'm not saying, it's terrible to be a lawyer. I'm happy that I did it. I'm proud of it. I met a lot of wonderful people. I'm glad that I finally did it for a small amount of time, and I got out and doing something else, and it's gotten me to where I am today. But there's a lot of people out there that think it's the end all be all, and it's not. And especially with the way things are now, and with the economy and the massive amounts of debt that you have to incur, it's not something to be taken lightly. So I would never discourage anybody from doing it, but I also encourage with a giant bag of salt, not a grain of salt, just a bag of salt, because you really need to know what you're getting yourself into. And if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, figure it out first. Find that out.
That's excellent advice. And it's so true. No one wants to hire you if you have a JD. They just assume the minute maybe you just haven't passed the bar yet, and the minute you pass, you're going to run away. Yeah. And it's next to impossible to convince them otherwise. But I think I read a similar article like in Newsweek saying how great a JD is for any purpose, a business degree or whatever. And it's not a business degree. You don't learn anything practical.
No, you don't. And that's the thing too, where a lot of what I'm doing now, I sort of wish, God, I wish at least undergrad I had taken more business courses, just so I can get the gist of what I've learned. A lot through my latest role, being exposed to these companies. but I wish I had I'd just be further along if I had.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Thank you, Dan. You gave us
Yeah.
so much information. It was really,
Yeah.
really helpful.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So, yeah, I'll definitely link you up in the comments, and yeah, have them reach out to you if they have any questions or anything like that.
Before we get to my top takeaways, let's hear from our sponsor. Juno can offer law students 1 to 2% less in interest rates on their loans below government loans with no origination fees and usually cash back. All this at no cost to the student. Even if it's just for a refi, Juno can save you thousands. Visit joinjuno.com/P, like podcast, /legal learning center to sign up. All right, here's my top takeaways from the chat with Dan. First, Dan mentioned that in law school, he didn't feel right, but he had never quit anything before. This is actually a very common feeling. We're so used to success that if we have a change of our mind, we feel like it's a failure, but it's not. It is our life, and we need to do what's right for us. So please be sure that you evaluate how you're feeling each step of your legal journey. It is never too late to leave, and it's not a failure. Now, second, he mentioned that having a Juris Doctorate degree hurt him. Many people go to law school because they think it's similar to an MBA. It's just another route to get there, and they don't want to go to med school. They just don't know what else to do. Having a Juris Doctorate can actually hurt you in getting a job because really it is meant that you become an attorney after that. So just keep that in mind. Number 3, the economy really hurt his ability to work, especially in his chosen career field. Now, this isn't just something that happened to Dan. This is something that continually happens about every 10 years. There was a recession in the 90s that severely harmed attorneys. After September 11th, in 2008, when it affected Dan, and in 2020, during the pandemic, and all of these have years worth of repercussions. So this will happen again. Someone with a 4-year degree is a little bit more marketable than someone with a higher education because when you are looking for a different type of position, they assume that as soon as the economy gets better, you're just going to leave and take that better job. Also, attorneys can only practice in their home state for the most part, versus somebody like a secretary or somebody with a 4-year degree can travel pretty much anywhere in the United States to work. So you really are more limited in some ways. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, all the tips and so forth, the links will be in the show notes. A full transcript is available as well. And if you learned something today, please be sure to like, share, subscribe so that others can see this podcast and it can help more people. Next week, we'll be chatting with Christine Tay of Tay Financial Coaching regarding money mindset and some other stuff too. And it will also be the first in a 3-part series on finances. Thanks.